I just want you to know that you are enough, that you are loved, that you are not defined by what has been done or is being done to you, or what has been said or what is being said over you. That does not define you. You are not alone. And when you are ready, there are people to support you. And there is another side to all of this. And when you are ready, all the survival skills that you have used, all the skills that you have within you are going to help you thrive. And this does not have to be your story.
Welcome to the New World Normal podcast. I'm Debbie Harrell, your host and the Question Normal coach. This podcast is all about examining our norms. Whether these are societal norms or personal norms, these are the systems, the cycles, and the patterns that are keeping us stuck. They're often keeping us overwhelmed and underfulfilled. So if you're less than excited by the status quo and you're ready to create change, disrupt, and do better, challenging the norms we've all been told will make us happy, asking the questions that we've been conditioned to ignore, and change our lives and our communities for the better in the process, then stick around. As a lifelong questioner and someone who prefers to operate outside of the box, I've designed this space for us to do this together. The disruptor, the cycle breaker, the rebel. Welcome. And now for today's show. On today's episode of New World Normal, I am talking to a very special guest, someone I have known for almost 3 years now. Lisa Croke is someone I met. We were both in the same life coaching certification course, and we worked together, practice coaching and getting to know each other. And I have nothing but the utmost respect and admiration for her. She is the real deal. We agreed to collaborate for a special episode in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which is October. So hopefully I get this episode edited and posted in October. Lisa is indeed a survivor of domestic violence, and she is on a mission to flip the script surrounding the stigma, what it means to be a survivor of domestic abuse, and really looking for the opportunities to reframe the traits that one develops to keep themselves safe and surviving in a dangerous situation. Can those traits now be seen as strengths and something that will actually help them move into thriving in this next phase of their life? I'm going to read Lisa's bio. It's a little longer than I'm used to reading, so forgive me if I stumble, but I feel like all the info in there is important. Here we go. Lisa Croke is a beacon of resilience and transformation with over 25 years of experience in supporting leaders and teams across the nonprofit, corporate, religious, and government sectors. Lisa's career has been driven by a profound commitment to empowering individuals to achieve their highest potential. Lisa's own journey is one of remarkable courage and reinvention. At 42, she emerged from a 20-plus abusive marriage. Faced with the loss of her career, community, and possessions, and a year of stalking at the hands of her abuser, Lisa bravely navigated the court system and relocated 2,000 miles away to rebuild her life from the ground up. She has since worked tirelessly to transform her personal hardships into a powerful narrative of strength and survival. Through her dynamic life coaching services and engaging social media presence, Lisa is dedicated to helping other trauma survivors transcend the mere act of survival and truly learn to thrive. Her approach is deeply empathetic and grounded in real life experience, making her uniquely equipped to validate her clients' experiences and provide practical tools for reframing their stories, claiming their superpower, and building a thriving life. Lisa is an ICF Associate Certified Coach and has completed over 60 hours of specialized training and more than 200 hours of coaching. Her academic background includes a master's degree in global leadership and a bachelor's in communication, equipping her with a comprehensive understanding of effective leadership and communication strategies. Her 4 years spent as a pastor further enhance her ability to create and maintain safe and empathetic spaces for her clients. When Lisa is not empowering survivors to live their best life, she can be found enjoying quality time with her family, being an awesome auntie to her new nephew and nieces, reading and spending time outdoors, preferably near the mountains. See, I told you, all that was good stuff. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Lisa. Be sure to stick around to the end and find out how you can connect with her and the New World Normal podcast. Okay, here we go. I have to admit that I am equal parts excited and terrified to be recording this episode for several reasons. As my regular listeners, are there any of you out there? Might know I've been on a break, a significant break. I had planned for it just to be short, but it was a little longer. It's been a year, almost a year and a half now. So I'm a little rusty with the quote unquote interviews. You know, I don't like to call them that. I prefer to call them conversations. So that has me feeling a little nervous. And also today's guest is someone I know in real life and care about. So that has got my nerves going too, because I want to do her story justice and honor her as a guest and share her story in a way that is helpful and impactful and doesn't do any undue harm to her as my guest or other listeners. So we're going to tread lightly. And I know she is very well trained and versed, and she knows that I am perfectly fine with her sharing as much or as little about her story as needed. And so here we go. Today, I'm very excited to be very excited and nervous to be having a conversation with my friend, Lisa. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Having me.
Jinx.
Jinx.
Why don't we start off as we settle in? Because I know we both just talking about how nervous we are. And you can just tell us something about yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what's brought you here today, what you're up to in life and business.
I love that. Thank you. That was very conversational. As you mentioned, it was not going to be an interview. So thank you for being vulnerable and setting the tone of how important this is to you. I also want to own that I am nervous. I appreciate that you say that I'm well-versed. Sharing my story is my story, so I've lived it and I am well-versed in it. However, I also never know how I'm going to be triggered or how my emotions are going to feel or how things are going to feel in my body. So I just want to own that and just recognize that I might pause, I might get emotional, and that's all part of the process. And then I also recognize that members of your audience want to know more, maybe from their own personal experience, maybe for those that may not know that they're in a situation like mine, or someone in the audience that knows somebody. 1 in 4 is impacted by domestic violence. And so I also carry that burden heavily of wanting to do a good job and not do harm also. So thank you for that. So all that to say, my name is Lisa Croke. I am a ICF ACC certified life coach. I work with high achieving women who have experienced relationship trauma, and I want and love to help them move beyond surviving and embrace thriving and tapping into their superpowers. So those things that have kept us alive and we are survivors are what also can help us thrive. I am a mom to 3. I have 3 in their 20s. I am an auntie to 4 who are very young and I get to see on a regular basis. And I love to be outside in nature. I used to live in Montana where there are beautiful mountains, and my current location does not offer mountains like that. So when I want to relax or when I want to calm, I think of being grounded at the foot of a mountain, and I love to be outside. So that's a little bit about me.
I love it. I like that you shared that nature's a part of your healing journey, because I too find solace in nature. Funny, I was on the East Coast recently and someone was pointing out a mountain and they're like, well, I guess it's not really a mountain to you, but
it's like a little hill. That's what I say. I say it's a little hill.
Well, I'm like, it's much bigger than what I saw in Florida. Cause I remember the first time I was in Florida, I was like, what's going on? Like you could see forever. I saw one hill while I was there. I was so excited. Look, there's a hill. That's exciting.
Yes.
My place is the ocean, born and raised in California. The few times I've lived, even 20 miles from the ocean was too much for me. So
Really? Okay.
I talk often about relocating because it is very expensive in Southern California. But then I realized, wait, there's not an ocean everywhere.
You're limited on where you can go.
So I was like, maybe if I just have a body of water somewhere, that would be helpful. I don't know, because I like you, I feel good, grounded in nature.
Grounded. Yeah.
So yeah, we kind of teased a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. Domestic violence is the topic. We are hopefully relaunching. Hopefully this is posted in Domestic Violence Awareness Month,
October,
which is October. And on my show, I love talking about questioning norms, disrupting norms. So I asked you, what norm, whether it's societal or personal norm, do you want to talk about disrupting today?
We have talked about this. So a few of the things that I think would be worth exploring, and I'm going to lead it to you to lead us in the right direction. First of all, as a survivor of domestic violence, I want to counter what we think of when we think of a victim or a survivor. We might think of uneducated. We might think of not financially affluent. We might think of a certain gender or a certain demographic. And I would just like to say that those of us that have experienced it are amazing. We are all across the board, and 1 in 4 women have been impacted by intimate partner abuse. And that is not counting the children that have been exposed to domestic violence who are also survivors. And we are thrivers. We are members of community we have superpowers. And I would love fellow survivors and victims to know that those skills that kept us alive also, when reframed, can help us thrive and move beyond those labels and those things that have been done to us or society has put on us. I did grow up in the church, and I also came from a religious background. I was a pastor, and I was married to a pastor. So Christianity, I would consider myself now a spiritual person, but I do acknowledge that the Christian beliefs and biblical beliefs that I believed and held very dearly did help me keep me in the system of abuse, both for my ex-partner and also for myself in the mindset. And then when you go in all that, you got to talk about the patriarch. And I've had some interesting experiences as a pastor in the church, as a female, how I was responded to when I did come forward and explain that I was experiencing abuse. And I did experience stalking after my divorce and had to go through the court system and ask the permission of a white male judge to make this man in my life stop harassing me, which is fascinating to think of the systems that are in place that really do not support women getting out of relationships. And so I know that's a lot, and we're very limited on time, but I think there's some juicy topics there.
Definitely. And the first thing that popped to mind was the reframe. You talked about the first topic of reframing those things that kept you alive into superpowers that can help you thrive in your new life, the new phase of your life. But I want to kind of back up because, right, that's a big, big shift. And I imagine it wasn't a like automatic thing, like where you start. So there was work involved. You talked about the systems, the traditional values. So I think I want to start there with the traditional values because it sounded like you were doing all the things, quote unquote, that you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And maybe you could share a little bit about that, like how the relationship started. And
yeah, I grew up in the Catholic Church, so family was very, very important. I'm actually an immigrant. So my parents are from England and Ireland. So I came to the States when I was 10. My early memories are very strong husband, wife, children, family dinners. We hung out with cousins, lots of cousins because Irish Catholics don't believe in birth control. So we were everywhere. But family and one husband and one wife, no divorce, regardless of what happened, you stuck together and that was it till you died. So that was ingrained in me from the beginning. When I met my ex-partner, I was going to a Bible study in high school and I met him through there and just really became involved in what I would say is, I was involved in many denominations, but let's just say I was evangelical Christian. And that is where you are taught no sex before marriage, purity movement. Women especially have to keep themselves pure. We have to keep ourselves covered up. I remember going on retreats where you could not wear a bikini if you had to wear a one piece. And even then you had to wear a t-shirt over it. And it was about, you would stay at home with the children and you would support your husband in whatever endeavors they would choose. And they were supposed to take care of you and they were supposed to care for you. But as a woman, it was very loud and clear that I was submissive. I was to be submissive, that if there was a disagreement, the final decision would come down to the man and the husband. And it was my job to keep the home and keep the peace. And so I wholeheartedly agreed with that. I signed up for it. I got married at the age of 19. We started having children when I was 22. We had 3 kids pretty close together. So by mid-30s, we were established. If you saw us on the street, you would not know. We would look like the perfect family. We were involved in ministry. So I was a pastor's wife. So there were all eyes on us. In a church, it's kind of like you live in a fishbowl as a pastor. Everybody's got eyes on you. Even if you're in the community, someone sees you at the grocery store, someone sees you, they always have eyes on you, and you have to go along with that facade. So I would say I wore a lot of masks. I also didn't have a lot of friends. So it was really easy to be isolated because I kept a distance because I was to support my husband and he was in leadership. So he was kind of up on the pedestal and I was there to make sure he was happy. And part of that was not having close friends. So in looking back, I realized that the power dynamics were there pretty early. He was young, he was handsome, tall, smart, wanted to give me the world, said it was wonderful, did all the things. And it was about 6 months into the relationship that I realized that something was wrong. And he started to use language that was more controlling, which was more demanding. And again, wanting to be submissive, wanting to be supportive, I went along with it. And I really didn't realize how damaging it was.
That was 6 months after you got married, you think?
No, that started 6 months into the relationship.
Into the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. It was probably there sooner. I've done a lot of counseling around it, a lot of digging around it. One of the things that was a factor in our relationship was we did not remain pure before marriage. And so that was something that he used against me and said, no one's going to want you. You already gave it away type of situation. I'm responsible for you as the person that took your virginity, but also who else is going to want you? And that was what I was hearing preached in the culture. And again, that's called purity culture. So if I go that far back, it was even more than 6 months less than 6 months into the relationship, but I didn't know any better. I wanted to be loved. He made me feel seen and heard.
Yeah. Well, and the community you were in, it was seen as normal.
Yeah.
That treatment, the submissive and controlling kind of. When did you start to recognize that it wasn't normal?
So that's a really great question and really nuanced and layered. Something that happens in an abusive relationship is you get disconnected from your gut. So I would say there were definitely instances early on where he would say something or do something like, well, you're my responsibility. Like, who wants to hear that, right? So that would impact me in my gut. And I'd be like, oosh, harsh. That didn't sound good. That didn't feel good. But you just blow it over. You're just like, maybe I heard it wrong, or maybe he didn't mean it that way, right? Like you just dismiss it. And as that happens more and more, you dismiss more and more until finally your gut disconnects and you just have no sense of right or wrong. It's just normal. And so We were married. I left in 2016. And in 2013, I started to see a counselor. And she was the first one after a year of therapy. She asked me the question, do you think this is normal behavior? Do you think this is an abusive relationship? And I remember needing to take a couple sessions to think about that because I did not see it that way.
Wow. After a year of therapy with a counselor, did he know you were in counseling or was this something you were doing? He did.
Yes, because he wanted me to be a better wife.
Okay. So he thought, I'm assuming this was a Christian counselor that was going to.
Yeah. But we got married in 94. So I can't math, but
I know. I was like, I can't do the math. It was like 20 something years, right? Right. Yeah. I think that's.
So it's a really layered. And then part of the system is I was part of church. So that was my community. Who was going to support me if I did divorce? Who would support me if I left? I was a pastor. He was a pastor. So what was that going to look like? How were we going to make a living? How were we going to take care of our children? We had moved away from family. I didn't have good friends. So not only was it not community, but it was also no family. Nobody knew anything. I never told anybody.
Sounds incredibly lonely.
Yes.
I had a thought, but I was just taken aback by like, oh my gosh, yes, you're completely isolated. And I feel like that is a tool that's used, that along with the gaslighting that you were feeling that was getting you disconnected from your gut. So not being able to trust yourself and then seeking counseling to become a better wife. Oh, the irony there. And it took a year after that for her to give you permission to think about it differently.
And I've talked to her about it. And she said she really thought about asking me that question because you have to be really careful with a person in that circumstance, whether they're willing or able to acknowledge, and you don't want to plant thoughts in someone's mind as a counselor, right? That she really thought long and hard before she broached that. But she did think that my safety was a concern and she decided to take that risk. And I don't know exactly her words, but she definitely didn't plant thoughts. It was in a very delicate professional way. And I had been in counseling before. So part of my thought process was, yes, I want to be a better wife. If I'm a better wife, then maybe you won't do the horrible things to me. If you're telling me that I need to be smarter, stronger, less, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, then I'm going to change my appearance. I'm going to make sure I don't gain weight. I'm going to go to a therapist. I'm going to read books. Like if there's a formula to make you stop, then by all means, because I am in this for life. I made a choice. I made a covenant. You are my best friend. Divorce is not an option. This is my life sentence. And if there's a way to make this any easier, then I will do whatever it takes to do that.
I had two questions. I was going to ask about the therapist. Did you ever ask her how long she suspected? Had she thought about it for a while, or was that?
I didn't ask her that, but I'm sure it was evident from the beginning because as the marriage grew and the relationship grew, he became more and more abusive, which is also common. On your first date, someone typically doesn't smack you because you'd leave, right? So there's insidious nature of not realizing what's happening. So by the time I saw her, which again was 3 years before I left, I was pretty comfortable sharing the ridiculous things that were happening that I didn't know were ridiculous. I have no doubt she thought that from the beginning, and that was part of the complicated piece of how she entered into it. Yeah.
How did you were in this situation where you were being psychologically, emotionally abused, likely from the get-go. At some point you started to recognize that this wasn't normal. You were fortunate enough to get a good counselor who was able to recognize it and help you recognize it. And then how did you get yourself out of it?
So to go back on something that you just said. So yes, it was psychological, it was physical, it was financial, it was technological, and it was sexual. So it was all pieces, right?
I love that you listed all of those because I think that's an important thing to touch on, because I know the household that I grew up in, and part of my stuff was recognizing that it was an abusive household. It was psychologically, emotionally abusive, occasionally physically abusive. So because it wasn't the in your face physical abuse, I was like, oh, it's not that bad. That kind of quantifying.
And that's common.
I think it really is. And I love that TV show that was on a couple of years ago called Maid.
Yeah.
MAID. And they really highlighted that the financial and the emotional aspects that someone doesn't have to physically be harming you to be abusing you. And you talked about isolation. Do you want to take a second to run through those things that you listed and maybe highlight?
So regarding the physical nature, that wasn't very often, but when it would happen, it would be intentional. So there would be no scars, there would be no markings, there would be no aftermath that someone could see. So that was always who knows, today might be the day where he decides to grab me or pick me up or pull my hair. Like, I don't know, right? So I think that's really important, that I think many times physical is portrayed as punching or threatening with hitting, picking. Though, yes. All those are part of it, but also is squeezing your arm so their fingerprints show, right? Bruising, pulling your hair, grabbing you by the neck, hurting you in some way. Those are all physical pieces that, again, you may not bruise. No one else would know, but it is still touching your body. It is controlling and coercing you in a physical way. I was financially, I did not have my own credit card. I didn't have my own checking account. I was responsible for our family finances, and he determined how much of his paycheck we would receive. And it was all of my paycheck. And every month we would sit down and we would go through the budget. And if there was a deficit or if we overspent, it was on me. And I was the one that had to get it together. It was me that had to figure out, okay, you have less now for groceries because of you messed it up last month. So this month you got less, and you figure out how to feed our family of 5 on that. I'm going to spend the money how I want to, but that's my money. But your money is our family money. I went back to school to get an education, and I took out loans that I still carry to this day. Because I chose to go back to school, I wasn't able to hold a job and take care of the house the way that he wanted it to, and to take care of the family. I took out student loans to help us get through that period of time. And in the divorce, he left. We made payments on his student loans every time. We never missed a beat. But I now carry loans because I chose to go back to school and still needed to carry the responsibility of the finances with the family. So finances can look very, very, very different. Technologically, he had all my passwords. He would pick my phone up. He would say, well, what's this text from so-and-so? Like what's, and he'd scroll through the messages. If I didn't give him the phone, there was consequences. I was afraid to go on a website and to go on Instagram. So one of the things that I do as a coach is I try to educate through my Instagram account, but I am fully aware that there are people that can follow me because that leaves a trail. So that is a way that they can coerce and they can control. They can grab your phone. They can find out where you're located. They can they can put malware on your device to track you. So that's the technological piece. There was a sexual component, but I'm not gonna touch upon that. But that was definitely control, power. Whenever there was an expectation, and if that expectation wasn't met, that I didn't realize was very high demand, but now I've come to find out was very high expectations on a regular basis, there are consequences to pay for that. So, and then I think that psychological piece, one of the psychological pieces is that moving target. Like, dinner wasn't on the table like I expected it. You did not clean the house the way that I expected. And at work today, you crossed me in that staff meeting. I would sit there, and as a logical person, I would go, okay, tomorrow dinner needs to be on the table at 6:00, not 6:30. I don't know what I said in staff meeting to cross him because we work together, but I'll be sure to keep my mouth shut next time. And then I already forgot what the third thing was, but it was just like, I was like, oh, if you're telling me you don't like things, then I just won't do those things. But the next day it would be something completely different. Or he would say, well, why is dinner on the table at 6 o'clock? Why aren't you serving me at 7? Was 7 o'clock an option? Like, so but that's in all areas, right?
The
house, everything.
The constant moving target, the constant elevated expectations. Yeah, that makes sense.
That didn't apply to him, just applied to me.
Of course not.
Right?
Which brings up to, I was just listening to that book, one of the Gabor Mate books, When the Body Says No, and they were talking about the importance of expressing your anger. And as you're explaining your situation, I can feel myself getting angry. And how have you worked to feel your anger, assuming you've had some anger?
I was really scared of anger. I had to work really hard on allowing myself to feel anger because I equated anger with him, and I didn't want to be anything like him. So for me to even feel anger felt very scary, felt really traumatic. I would shake and it would be like, no, I don't want to be him. I do not want to be him. And so I had a wonderful counselor, one of many I've had over the years, because everybody should be in therapy. But they're like, that's good that you're feeling the anger, but the only way that you can heal from it is to go through it. And seeing and knowing you as a person, you're not going to get stuck there. And that was my other fear, that I was going to get stuck. And they're like, you're not going to get stuck, but you are not going to completely heal, I don't think we ever completely heal. You're not going to heal if you don't allow yourself to feel it and to move through it. So even to this day, I still struggle with it. I love the body movement of like shaking or dancing. I've gone to a rage room before and just knocked the shit out of glass bottles. I smashed glass bottles up against a wall. That was so, so amazing. And I had music going in my ears. I've run, I've exercised.
I just put a puzzle piece together for myself talking about the rage room, because I think it's common what you were talking about, being afraid of getting stuck. I feel like people feel that about lots of different feelings. I know I have felt it like, oh, if I let myself go there, like, I am not returning.
Yes.
And I've heard people talk about rage rooms, and I'm like, oh, I just can't bring myself to do that. And I'm recognizing it's because of the villain of my story. That was one of his MOs, was to break things.
Yes.
Come in my room and break things. Oh, thank you. I have something to talk to my therapist about. And that's part of, I don't know, I call it fun sometimes, but maybe not necessarily fun in the funnest sense of that word. But it's rewarding when you're on this healing journey. Like you said, I don't think we ever completely heal.
Right.
But you keep putting pieces together and, oh, that's why I did that. That's why I couldn't do that. Okay. A little bit more unraveling and uncovering and weight off of the shoulders of, why can't you figure this out? That's what I've put on myself several times in therapy. Like, okay, she's explained it to you. And I'm like, get over it. Like,
click, make it click. Yes. Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And I feel like I had a follow-up when you were talking about the different types of abuse and how they show up. But back to how did you start to get yourself out of the situation?
Yes, thank you. So on average, a person will try and leave 7 times. Will try and leave an abusive relationship 7 times. And I definitely fit that statistic. I was either coerced back, I was manipulated back, I was threatened back. And so there were signs that throughout those last few years where I was and talking to the therapist was like, oh, I need to have a plan. And this, I think sometimes in movies, there's this portrayal of or shows, it's like, you wake up one day and you decide to leave and that's it. And it doesn't. It takes so much time. So I called my local hotline. A crisis hotline is confidential. And you can call them and you can ask them questions. You don't have to be in crisis, but you can explain the dynamics of your relationship, or you can say, how do I get out safely? And some of their advice was, unless you're ready, don't attempt to leave. Don't let someone else talk you into it. When you know when you're ready, we are here. We are a shelter we can offer. I assembled over a good couple of years a go bag. So a go bag is something that they recommend you have a change of clothes, you have medication, you have birth certificates, legal documents, passports, so that if you have to flee and you can't get back into your house or you don't have access to things, you have this bag that you can just grab or keep in your car. And it's a go bag. Many times they'll say put a burner phone in there, put extra cash in there. And that's not always feasible for people. But I went to the gym. And so I made a go bag that was my gym bag. But that thing was heavy. That had all kinds of stuff in there.
How did you make the call to the crisis center?
I was called during a counseling appointment. So I used my counselor's phone.
Okay.
And she was willing to sit with me. And I was able to ask questions that way because he could have traced that on so the extra layer, we lived in a small town. I was a pastor and I knew that members of my congregation probably worked that hotline.
Oh, wow.
So I waited a really long time. I actually now, again, pieces are falling back into place. I lived in Montana, big counties. I contacted the next over county's crisis number because I wanted to make sure that my congregation wouldn't see my name. Now I know that it's confidential. They will not approach you. It's like you're a therapist. They're not going to approach you. Hey, how you doing in public, right? Not that you might mind, but again, things you don't know. And so there came a time where there was a particular incident, extremely violent. And in that moment, I was faced with the reality of either I'm going to die of stress because I have to hold this together. My kids were in the house and my ex-mother-in-law was in the house, and he chose to be very violent and do this in a very intense way. And so in that moment, I was like, if I continue to live like I'm a normal person and leave this room like nothing happened, my body is going to break down. I'm going to die of stress, or this is the moment where he's going to kill me. So either way, I'm dead. And that was the reality that I faced. And so I was able to get out of the situation. I was able to get out of the room. I went downstairs. He was very, very, very angry. And he chose to leave the house and said he wasn't coming back until I got my shit together, until I figured out how to be a good wife. And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't be there when he got home. So I told my kids were older, and I said, if you wake up and I'm not here, I will contact you, but I'm not safe and I need to take care of myself, but don't worry about me. I'll be okay.
Okay. And so they were older at the time. Were they aware of the physical abuse?
I would like to believe that they weren't aware of the physical abuse, but they were aware of the other abuse. Again, you think that nobody else sees it, but they were aware. Yeah.
And so you got yourself out that day. That was the day.
Got out that day. And I went to an Airbnb. So I didn't have my own credit card, and I knew he would trace the credit card. So I took a risk and I went to an Airbnb because Airbnb doesn't give you the address until you paid. And I had my own account. So I figured he could see that I'm in an Airbnb. He could see the area that I'm in, but he won't know the address. And he did find me. Within 24 hours, he found out exactly where I was. And so for the next few months, I lived in my car. I tried to go to an Airbnb. And eventually my counselor knew somebody that needed someone to house sit. And I ended up there for a few weeks. But I couldn't tell anybody in the congregation. I went to work as usual because of our livelihood. And he was aggressively stalking me.
I was to say, wow, that's big that you kept going to work. So you were keeping up that facade, that normalcy.
Yeah.
That's a lot. What do you think you mentioned that on average, a woman tries, or a victim tries 7 times to get. What do you think contributed to that being the time that was it just you'd tried enough before, or was there anything significant about first night away? Was that the first night you'd stayed away?
No,
Or
I had stayed. I had tried to leave before, and I had stayed a couple of nights away. I'm going to try and articulate something, and I'm not sure how it's going to come across. So I'm just going to say it. When you're in an abusive relationship and you start to become aware of the abuse for what it is, it's like you're coming out of the fog, right? And so I existed in it for so long and it was normal. But once I started talking to the counselor, once I started realizing that I needed, it was as if it was in that moment that I was like, he had tried to kill me before, but I didn't realize it. And I know that sounds so absurd and that may sound so strange to hear, but it was always, he's not going to do it. Or I guess I can't explain that very well. But in that moment, it was 25 things are going through your head and you're like, I am going to die. I'm going to die. Like, this is possible. My life could be over. My kids are going to find me. Do I have a bag? Can I get out of here? What is the plan? Can I leave this room? Has he got the room blocked? What will it take to leave? But when it comes down to it, I was finally in a position to go, I could die. Even though he had done horrible things before, it was the reality because the fog had lifted and I saw his behavior for what it was. And he really, there's another thing that happens many times with abusers, their eyes go black. It's called black eye. And it's like they leave and it's a completely different person. And so when that expression came over his face, I'm like, he is not in control. He may not want to hurt me and he may want to threaten and intimidate me. But in this moment, he's not here and he's not getting what he wants. So he easily could kill me. And then there's my awareness of like, holy shit, this is fucked up. And oh my God, I could die. It was like this perfect storm of it all coming together. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I feel like, until it happens to you, you always think, oh, that happens to somebody else. I'm sure that's true with the abuse as it was first starting, recognizing that it was, okay, yeah, but it's not that bad. Like he's not leaving marks or he's not like punching me, that all that quantifying and comparing, and then having the permission to look at it differently. And then that gives you the opportunity to build new awareness, which it sounds like you built an awareness of like, oh, wait, this is not only not normal, I am in danger.
Danger. Exactly.
Like recognizing that he's not in control. So even if he doesn't, like intentionally want to harm me or kill me, that could be what happens. So to get yourself out of there. Wow. So you got yourself out, you stayed because you recognized that you were in danger. You didn't want your kids to find you that way. What were some things that contributed to that being a successful removing yourself from the situation?
Counseling also gave me the opportunity to recognize that what if I'm no longer part of this community? What if I can't go to my family? And what if I have no community? Do I still want to live this way? Because the reality was I was going to potentially lose my career, the way I make money. Mm-hmm. I was going to lose my community of my congregation. I was going to lose my faith because the religious organization that I had worked so hard to become a leader in may potentially not believe me. And I was going to lose my home because I wasn't going to be able to make enough money. So counseling allowed me the opportunity to explore what happens if you lose all that. Is it still worth staying? Is it worth dying for? Because that's what's going to happen. And so that was really the biggest piece of like, and again, another click in aha in that moment was like, I don't want to die and I'm not willing to do this at any cost. I will figure this out. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this isn't worth dying for. And I want to live.
And were you able to imagine yourself rebuilding again and finding new community?
No.
No.
I just knew. there was none of that. There was no, you're in survival mode. So when you're in survival mode, it's Maslow hierarchy of needs. You're not dreaming. You're not hoping. You're just like, I need like, where survive. Am I putting my head tonight? Where am I? I'm living in my car. Okay. I have the car keys. He doesn't need to know where I am. I can sleep in my car. That is a logical explanation. So because I had a logical explanation, to me in the moment, that was, it doesn't cost a credit card. I don't have to tell anybody, and it buys me some time to figure out what my next step is.
And you can move if you need to immediately.
Right. So I think success meant I was connected to my counselor. She was able to help me with next steps. I had the crisis center. They were able to give me my options. I did report him. Well, I went to the church and with the help of my counselor, and I went to leadership and said, this is happening. Is it possible can I be on, what did they call it? Like, I need crisis intervention. Like, can you give me 30 days where I just can help figure myself out because I'm in crisis? And so I didn't have to go to work. I was able to figure that piece out. I was still getting paid. I went to my family and I told them, I think I need to get a divorce, which was probably one of the hardest things I ever did, was to approach my Catholic father. Of all the 50 plus family members in my family, no one has ever gotten a divorce. So to come forward as a woman, as a pastor, to admit that I had failed was an extremely painful thing to do, was to call my parents and say, this has been happening and I need to get a divorce. And I was very fortunate that they said, what do you need? How can we support you? I think that we have seen that you have done everything you can to make your marriage work. We have not understood the dynamics, but we see you and it's okay. You need to get out, and how do we help you? And so that was a huge piece. And I understand that's privilege. Not everybody has that. So I reconnected with my family. I was able to tell a trusted couple of people in the community, and they were able to offer a listening ear. They were able to be supportive, and they were able to say, we believe you, and whatever you need, we're here for you, even when I didn't know what that was. So I was able to file for a divorce. I went through that process. The crisis center helped me find a divorce attorney, because when you are divorcing someone that has that personality or those tendencies, it can be a very complicated, very horrible process to get divorced. So they guided me in that. And then I thought once I was divorced, it would be okay. So unfortunately, the stalking began or continued. And I had to, a year later, go to and get a restraining order. And once I got the restraining order, I left the courtroom. I got in my car, which had all the belongings I could put in my 2007 Subaru station wagon. And I drove 2,000 miles to the East Coast. So I think to your question of how was it successful? It was all the pieces kind of lined up, all the building blocks, all the foundation of the conversations and the realities. And I'm 42. I don't want to die. Like, I have so much life to live, and he doesn't get to do this to me anymore. Was a huge factor.
Well, and also what I heard, that awareness, yes. And then also you were able to, even though you initially, and this is at least what I'm hearing, obviously, you were afraid you were losing your community. It sounds like you were pretty quickly able to recognize that you still had pieces of community, whether you had your counselor and the crisis center, and then figuring out who you could trust. I was curious, as you were talking about when you went to the church to ask for the crisis intervention, you were in leadership at the church. Had you ever had an opportunity to help any other women that were in, or had the church ever intervened in anything like that before?
So my local church, I did not go to my local church. I went to my denomination. So I went to the leadership. Their main offices were in Chicago. And when I contacted them, they put me in touch with someone who had worked in domestic violence in a previous life before she was in ministry. She had done domestic violence intervention in Chicago. And so she was very intimate with what was going on. And when I met with her in person, she said, we're actually helping 7 other pastoral couples in the denomination who are going through this right now.
Wow.
And that just turned my stomach.
I mean, it feels a little better that they were addressing it, because so often we hear about the horrors that are happening in organized religion and how it's always trying to be swept under the rug or denied.
I was told that I needed to file a police report. And if I didn't file a police report, then my word wasn't going to be good enough.
Oh,
even though I was licensed.
Okay, so there goes that
it didn't end in a happy way. No, sorry, I can't give him credit.
I tried to give him benefit of the doubt.
I know, and I want to go there with you. I worked with some really good people. And the reality is that my ex is still a pastor.
Bonkers. It's bonkers, but not surprising. You hear all of these horror stories and that it just continues on. Crazy.
Yeah, sad.
So you got out and you're living your life and you have these skills that you developed that kept you safe.
Yep.
When were you able to do that reframe of recognizing, oh shit, this stuff that kept me safe actually benefits me in different ways? That shifting that
narrative. So part of it was when people would be able to reflect back to me, our community reflected back, like, you're here on the East Coast and you went through all that. And now you're doing this. You're a leadership consultant. You're like, how are you still standing? And it would be like, oh, okay. And then I was in a master's degree program when I left, and that was something I was willing to put on hold, but somehow I was able to continue the master's degree. So I'm like, okay, I have a master's degree. I've started a new career. I am rebuilding my life. How does this happen? And I was able to look back and go, well, all the other times I was doing these things, I just kept going. I'm just doing it in a different way. And I don't have the weight of an abuser on my shoulders. And I cannot be the only one that steps out of this situation and is a success. Like, there has to be others of us like that. And then I thought, if I knew this when I was in the thick of it and I saw someone succeeding, or I saw someone that had a similar story, I think this is why stories are so powerful. That would have encouraged me so much, but I didn't have a model for what it looked like. It was just, you were in a relationship or you were out of relationship, but nobody talks about how that works and those steps. And so I realized that a big, huge part of that was reframing. Was I almost died. There are women that don't get to walk away. There are women that die. And somehow I'm still standing. I'm a fucking survivor. And I want other women, because our society sees us as victims or broken or weak, or why didn't you leave?
Why didn't you leave?
I
can't believe people still ask that question. Like, don't we know that already? Like, it's not
patriarch, man. So it was just kind of all these things clicked together of reflection of what I had done, reflection of people responding like, what? Like bewilderment. And then realizing I can't be the only person. And how do I reshape this narrative? What can I do? What can I do? And then I'm like, this is a big F you to my abuser. Like, oh, you thought you were going to take me down. Well, look at me now. And I'm helping other people so they don't have to be in this situation.
I think that's such a big part of it, that when people have these negative experiences, to be able to turn around and help somebody else is part of your healing journey too.
Yes.
I know I've felt that myself. And yes, heck yeah, you did it. And I was getting goosebumps as you were just sharing all of that. So we're winding down our time. I feel like we covered most of what we talked about covering. Was there anything that you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on yet?
So I did want to talk about, if someone in the audience is in this situation or just coming out of this situation, and just speaking to them directly. And I just want you to know that you are enough, that you are loved, that you are not defined by what has been done or is being done to you, or what has been said or what is being said over you. That does not define you. You are not alone. And when you are ready, there are people to support you. And there is another side to all of this. And when you are ready, all the survival skills that you have used, all the skills that you have within you are going to help you thrive. And this does not have to be your story. And I think for those that are seeing a loved one or may feel, or they may know that someone is in this situation, believe them when they come and talk to you. Don't force anything. They are going to be ready. When they are ready to talk, hold space for them, listen to them without judgment, support them, believe them. If you need to do something practical, maybe look up hotlines or resources so that when they are ready, you have that for them. It's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of waiting for them because there is a great risk if they are to share with you. I bailed a lot of times on people that tried to make a connection with me because at the last minute, I was slapped or I was told that I looked ugly before I walked out the door, or something else was demanded of me. So I would cancel. So I would say, show grace to those people, to your friends. And I have to be honest, I haven't seen this anywhere else. And I just had a conversation with my new husband because I did get remarried last year. If you think this is happening, do not confront the abuser. You are not doing your friend or your family member any favors. Somebody approached me and said, I see some bruises on your arms. What's going on? And I honestly had not recognized it. I didn't even see it. But as soon as I looked down, I had a t-shirt on and I said, nothing is going on. And they said, really, how did you get those bruises? Did he grab you? And this was very early on. And I said, maybe, but I'm asking you, please don't say anything. And he goes, no. I'm just going to talk to him, man to man. I'm just going to have a conversation. And the fury and the aftermath of when that person left, because my ex-partner believed that I had ratted him out, that I had said something. And there was absolutely no belief that this other intelligent human being could have put some pieces together. So what I was talking to with my new husband was, we're taught to intervene if we see sexual harassment or if we see sexual assault. And I think those are very applicable. You do intervene. But when it's domestic violence and there is so much that goes on behind closed doors, you just have no idea. And so to intervene or to confront, it is I would assume it is a very powerless place as a friend to know what's going on behind closed doors. But if that person confides in you, that is your opportunity to support them and speak life into them. Tell them you support them, that you love them. But it is going to take a lot of courage for that person to come forward and tell you, and it is at great risk to them.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for those closing, I don't want to call it advice, but the little tips for someone that might be in that situation, someone that knows someone in that situation, and especially that last comment about not intervening. That's a really good point to keep the other person's safety in mind, because I feel like we touched on earlier, well, that's not going to happen. That happens to other people. Well, it could very well happen to the person that you care about. So tread lightly and be patient and have grace. I also love the practical aspect, because I am one that wants to figure out, like, how do we fix it? Okay. So like I can look things up and I can have a list and I can be ready for when they come to me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for holding space for me today and allowing me the opportunity to share my story, some of my story.
I know you are a consultant and I know you are a coach. Are you actively coaching people in this space. So would you like to tell people where they can connect with you?
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn and I'm also on Instagram and I have a website. The easiest way probably is through Instagram. You can message me there, but it also links to my website. It's at helviccoaching.com. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes. Helvic.com is the website. My handle on Instagram is just Helvic Coaching. If it is a resource that can be shared, please share with others that may be in a relationship and they may not know. You can get educated yourself on things. It's really just an opportunity for me to share my story as I understand the importance of story. And I do offer coaching. So I coach one-on-one and I offer 3-month packages where I will walk alongside you and hold space for you and help you reframe some of those tapes and things that have been done and said and help you tap into your superpowers with the ultimate goal of thriving and moving beyond surviving.
Awesome. We will definitely share all of that in the show notes and add some more resources. I like the idea of having resources there for anybody that happens upon this episode.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the New World Normal podcast. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And if you did, feel free to head over to Apple or Spotify and leave us a review. It's a very easy way to help us get the word out about the show. And if there is anyone in your life who might benefit from hearing the information that we shared today, please send them this episode. Let's get the word out that normal isn't always better. A lot of times it's what's keeping us overwhelmed and underfulfilled. Let's keep questioning it together. Thanks again.